Hey everybody, welcome back to the Muscle Intelligence Podcast. I'm your host, Ben Pakulski. Today we're going to talk about my new mission, why it fits into the world, and why it might be interesting to you. The idea of being an athlete when I'm 80 is ultimately what drives my day-to-day decisions around training, around nutrition, around lifestyle interventions, around biohacking, all these crazy things that exist out there. And there's an infinite number of possible interventions, but not all of them are weighted equally for me. And so while the world is telling you need to cold plunge and sauna and do stem cells and do plasma apheresis and take this vitamin and take this pill and, you know, the infinite number of levers that can be pulled are not all equal to your physiology. They're not all equally beneficial. They're not all equally going to be used on an equal frequency or timing and cadence. And understanding how to do that and which ones are most important for you right now based on your goals is really what's driving my education currently, what's driving my mission, and ultimately allowing me to unlock the greatest version of myself today so that I can perform at my highest level and ultimately unlock this athlete when I'm 80. And so why do I want to be an athlete when I'm 80? Well, the truth is, it just feels like a really worthwhile goal for me. And why an athlete? Well, an athlete, what is an athlete? Let's define an athlete. An athlete is someone who moves well, who has the strength to weight ratio to be able to do everything in all situations. So when you're 20 years old, when you're 15 years old, chances are you're probably a pretty good athlete. And maybe if you weren't, you can still be one. And if you were a great athlete, what that means is generally you're strong, you're fast, you're physically resilient, or physically capable. The term I like to use is physical capability. Like, I want to be able to run, I want to be able to lift, I want to be able to swim, I want to be able to fight, I want to be able to jump out of an airplane, I want to be able to surf. All these different physical endeavors that may or may not come up, but if they do, I want to be ready. You know, you think of like the ultimate athlete is maybe a Navy SEAL or Delta Force equivalent who they're just prepared for all things. Now, those guys are obviously operating at a really high level of stress because of the demands of their profession. We don't want to operate at that level of demand, but we want to be able to have that level of preparedness, right? Think of physical preparedness. And ultimately, as we age, generally, there's some decline in physical preparedness. Well, how do we think about what's actually happening to allow this body to decline and prevent it? And now, is all decline preventable? Probably not, although I think it may very well be. With the accelerated rate of learning and the accelerated rate of testing that we have in the world right now, and testing may be blood testing, urine testing, physical testing, and muscle testing, and nervous system testing, and brain testing, we can now see what's happening inside the body. We can now observe and test and objectify what's happening inside the body. So who's to say that in the next 3, 5, 20 years, we don't have the ability to solve all of these problems of physical capability? Now, there's other levels of capability we have to measure as well, right? So if we look at what other things would actually slow us down or prevent us from being an athlete when I'm 80, it's my belief that there's 4 areas, and I've recently recorded a podcast on this. But it's my belief that, you know, there's probably an infinite number of things you could do, but really only 4 things that are measurable outputs. So we have physical capability, we have mental capability, we have physiological capability, which is ultimately stress, and we have energy, metabolic capability. Those are really it. And so if we can objectify each of those 4 areas and look, well, what does my body need now, which is completely different than everyone else, right? There's no one in this entire world that has the same physiology as me. So therefore, no one should be having the exact same nutrition, and no one should be having the exact same supplement routine, and no one should be having the exact same biohacking routine. And so for me to steal a biohacking routine off of YouTube is, you know, minimally effective at best, but ultimately often senseless. So why would I be doing the same protocol as Brian Johnson when I'm not Brian Johnson? So stop modeling other people and start understanding how to test and objectify your body, because you're not going to make it to 80 unless you start to understand living in harmony with your genetics, living in harmony with your genetics, your environment, your lifestyle, your nutrition. These things need to be harmonized. If they're not, you're not going to succeed. Why? Because we're different. Your genes are different, your history is different, your lifestyle is different, and how all these things interact ultimately is unbelievably important to your success. So the point of this podcast and ultimately this business Muscle intelligence as a business, as a community, as a mission, is to give you an understanding of all of those things that are ultimately levers for you that are going to allow you to be the most effective athlete when you're 80. Now, for the next 20 years, we're going to be going through this stuff together. I'm going to be leading this charge, interviewing the best people in the world, and ultimately testing it all on myself so that I can be the greatest athlete I can. Why do I want to be an athlete when I'm 80? To be honest, I want to be able to play with my kids. I want to be able to play with my grandkids. That's my greatest value, right? Being able to be there for my children for whatever they need. My daughter is 11, and I still carry her up the stairs, down the stairs, and never do I worry about my back. My son is 13. I still wrestle with him every day. We fight a little bit. I carry him around the house. I still insist at 120 pounds, he's 120 pounds, and being his physical superior. I have every intention of being his physical superior when he's 25 and 30. Not because I'm egocentrically wired to be bigger and stronger than my son, but because I want to be able to wrestle with him, carry him up the stairs. If he hurts himself, I'm there to carry him and not have to worry about it, right? Oh, no, I can't do it. The day that happens is the day I'm getting my ass back to the gym and working harder. And so that's where I sit. There's been a couple things in my life. There's been a couple events in my life where I was like, fuck, I failed, right? So for me, failing as a dad means my daughter goes, Daddy, can we play tag? And I go, I can't, sweetheart. Why not? Because I'm injured. Oh, well, that's no good, right? How do I fix that? So what did I do? And true story, right? I tore my Achilles, not a full tear, but a pretty significant tear, and I couldn't run, couldn't do it. I did it playing baseball. I'm like, man, I can't do it. And so what did I do? I was like, I've done stem cells 4 times, all of which with the intention of healing that Achilles. Because if I can't run with my kids, what good am I, right? Like, can I still love them? Yes. Can I still lead them? Yes. But the way we bond and connect is over movement. We bond over wrestling and tag and running and walking in the mornings and golf and whatever, surfing and skiing. And I was like, if I can't do that, I feel like I'm not showing up at the best version of myself for those little humans. And that's all I want, right? That's all I want in my life, is to be able to be there in every moment for them. When they need me, I got them. So whether or not that's important to you is up to you, but that's important to me. And so this brings us to a conversation around values. And so one of the challenges that I weigh as a man every day is how to allocate time. Let's say on average, we've got 16 hours we're awake. I always call it a 16-hour audit. We're sleeping for 8, we're up for 16, give or take. So how you invest those 16 hours is hopefully under your conscious control, not unconscious control, right? The world is a beautiful, wonderful place. And for better or worse, the world is making things easier. The world is becoming easier. It's becoming less challenging. And so allocating time toward things that are easy and comfortable and make me feel good is really easy, right? It's very easy for me to choose the fast food, the convenience, the easy path. But I know that's the path to weakening, isn't it? The path to always choosing what I want, what I desire in this moment is the path to weakening. The path to strengthening is doing what I need to do, not what I want to do. And so understanding what I value for me drives my decisions minute to minute to minute. So, there's certainly more than this, but if I were to tell you right off the top of my head what I value, I would say I value my family and connection to my family and love and unconditional love within my family. And then I value growth immensely. And then I value my mission and ultimately my wealth and my legacy. And those sort of all tie in because I want to be able to make a very comfortable living. In fact, I want to be very wealthy to support my future generations because I believe the world is challenged in many ways. And the only way out is fuck you money, not because I'm greedy, but because I want to be able to help people without having to worry about it, right? I have a desire to give freely. I want to be able to give, if I see someone who needs, and I still do this, even though I'm not, independently wealthy yet, I still want to be able to give things and not have to worry about it. Give people money, give people scholarship, give people, a home, give people whatever they need, what a support. And I love that. And so wealth has now recently become one of my values, even though I would have told you 5 and 10 years ago that it wasn't. What I realize is now wealth is empowerment. Wealth is the ability to do what you want to do, when you want to do, and support the causes that are important to you. So anyone who says they don't value wealth, I encourage you to think deeply on that, because it's okay that you don't. But for me, it was a story that was taken from my youth of like, oh, I don't need wealth. And maybe I don't, but I want it because I love to do the things I want to do when I want to do it at a high level and be able to support people to do that with me and support people to do the things they need, right? I digress. So if you don't understand your value hierarchy, do it today, not tomorrow, do it today. Go to drdmartini.com and do your values determinants, which is Dr. John Demartini, and he is the world's authority on values. And what he'll tell you, I've done many of his courses, what he'll tell you is that you are unconsciously living within your value hierarchy already. Make them conscious and have the ability to allocate time and resources accordingly. So if I say that I value my family above all, does my schedule reflect that? Am I actually allocating time and resources and attention there? Or is that just what I'm telling myself, which isn't really true? For example, the example Dr. Demartini uses all the time is many people say they want to be wealthy, but they spend money on trinkets and things that make them comfortable in the moment rather than buying assets that appreciate. They're buying things that depreciate. And that's a brilliant conversation to have with yourself. So do you actually value wealth? Are you actually investing in yourself? Are you actually investing in your future? Assets that appreciate? Maybe not. So look at yourself, look at your schedule, look at your time. People say, man, how do you balance being a guy who wants to be an athlete when he's 80, which requires a lot of physical movement, which requires a lot of time, with being a dad, being an entrepreneur, CEO of multiple companies? Well, that's how. I'm very conscious of how I allocate time, and I don't waste time. That's not true. I do waste way too much time. But it's generally intentionally allocated, meaning I know that I'm going to be wasting time, quote unquote, wasting time. Maybe it's just like, hey, I'm going to hang with my kids. We're going to do nothing. We're going to watch a movie. But I know that's intentional time. Or it's like, hey, I'm going to read this book or take this course. Like most people are like, oh, you're just kind of chilling. Yeah, but I'm doing something that's moving me in the direction of being more capable of living within my value hierarchy now and in the future. When we come back to being this goal of being an athlete when I'm 80, it does require me to open up time in my schedule to have the right amount of time allocated to physical movement, and I'll get into how that looks, allocated to maybe learning some new skills and keeping my body like a well-oiled machine, right? Obviously, that requires me nourishing my body a really specific way. That requires me knowing the tools that I have at my disposal when I hurt myself, when I feel like I can't do it, when I feel like I can't move. What do I need to do now to get myself back on track? Think of trajectory. Think of the term trajectory. Are you on the right trajectory or are you off target, right? So to be on the right trajectory to be an athlete when I'm 80, I think my physical capability needs to be on the upswing. I can't be even on the level, or certainly not on the down. I have to be on the upswing pretty much till I'm 80. I need to be improving in some way. That doesn't mean in all ways, but in some way. And so there's a small number of physical abilities that we can objectively measure that will ensure or make it more likely that we're going to move in that direction. The first thing I'll say is none of those at 44 years old for me require me smashing my body into the ground ever. So I don't have these egocentric desires to prove myself to anybody. Well, I can outlift this guy. I can outrun that girl. I can out high rocks this person. It's great to be competitive, but competitive with myself. Because if I'm trying to beat other people, that's when we get hurt, right? That's when things start to break down. That's when you put yourself into this massive state of burden that maybe you can or can't recover from. Here's something that I know about my genetics. I have relatively poor inflammatory genetics. I also have relatively poor insulin genetics, glucose tolerance genetics. So if I have poor inflammatory genetics and I push my body really, really hard like I did as a bodybuilder, and I continue to do that, and I don't support these poor inflammatory genetics with great food and great nutrition, what happens? Inflammation takes over my body and I become ultimately a diseased person. I have to pay attention. I have to manage it. So I decrease my training intensity or my training volume a little bit, manage my inflammatory burden daily, and I'm more consistent with my training than more intense. So for me, intensity is important, but it's not the measure of success. The measure of success is, am I doing it every day? Because I want to be consistent and I want to make sure that I have certain markers of success, meaning, is my mobility where I want it to be? Is my strength where I want it to be? Is my muscle where I want it to be? And I have these objective markers that I'm happy to share with anyone if you guys are interested. But I want to be able to squat a certain amount, deadlift a certain amount, bench a certain amount, pull up a certain amount, etc. As a proxy for how I'm doing relative to my best self. So if that starts to decline rapidly, I need to take action, right? So I have these I think of like check engine light, right? Like, oh, yep, I know exactly what measures of success are. My waist measurement is a measure of success. My body fat is a measure of success. My yoga class is a measure of success. I know exactly what a yoga pose should feel like in its best, most effectively executed format. I know exactly what it looks like. And if I'm not able to do that, okay, I need a few more yoga classes this week, right? Or a few more yoga classes this month. I know exactly what my strength looks like. If I'm not squatting what I want to squat, no problem. I got to make sure I do a few more strength workouts or my VO2 max and cardio training. If I'm not there, I need a little more. So I literally have this dashboard of my metrics of success. And I just measure against those. And if you don't already have those metrics of success, create them. If you need some support in creating, that's what we do in our business, right? We're like, hey, based on your mechanics, based on your current athletic ability, based on where you want to go, here's where you need to be. You get a dashboard. It's really simple. So in that metric dashboard, I'm looking at my physical capabilities, so my strength and my mobility and my body fat and my waist measurement, but I'm also looking at inflammatory markers. I'm also looking at insulin levels. I'm also looking at glucose levels. I'm also looking at triglycerides and cholesterol. So I've got this dashboard of markers that are important to me. My testosterone's on there. Why? Because I know if my testosterone falls below a 700, I just don't feel the same, right? I feel like I lose that like masculine energy. I sort of become complacent. I sort of become not noticeably, but noticeable to me. Like I feel great. If my testosterone is 400, I feel awesome, but there's sort of something missing. I lose the edge. Anyways, I digress. So how do I personally operationalize being an athlete when I'm 80? Well, the answer is I make sure that I'm doing cardio at least twice a week, ideally 4 times a week. I have a minimum standard and a maximum standard. I make sure I'm training at least 3 to 4 times a week at minimum, ideally 5 or 6. Sometimes I'll train 7 days a week. How I've operationalized that, and this is going to sound like something you guys can't do or maybe aren't willing to do, I've actually committed to increasing my training time to 4 to 5 hours every single day, usually 5 hours a day. Now, that doesn't mean that I'm in the gym 5 hours a day. What it could mean is that I'm doing mobility, I'm doing a bike ride, I'm doing a walk, I'm doing a run, I'm doing a gym workout, I'm doing a yoga workout. I know 5 hours a day is completely unreasonable for some people, but it's only unreasonable because you'll allow it to be. I promise you, if you say, hey, I'm going to commit to doing this, it'll happen. And if I'm honest, I got this from our great buddy, Paul, who he just does 5 or 6 micro workouts a day. And I was like, that's amazing. He does 15 or 20 minute workouts 5 or 6 times a day. He's like, kids are getting their shoes on for school. I'm outside pushing a sled. He's like, kids are, at baseball practice. Instead of watching, I'm doing pull-ups or I'm doing lunges or I'm doing squats. And you're like, oh. So he's found a way to build these things into his life. I know most people aren't willing to do that. And that's the truth, right? Be honest with yourself. I'm just not willing to do that. Well, it's not that it's not possible for you. It's not you're not willing to do it. And so by changing your standard for yourself, you change the outcome. So if your standard is such, oh, I'm wearing jeans, I'm not willing to do the thing, great, you're not willing to do the thing. Last night at my son's hockey, I did a 30-minute workout in my jeans. And you're like, yeah, so you're sweaty, wash your jeans, you're good. Take a shower, you're good. It's not the best situation in the world, but at least I'm able to move because I know my goal is to be an athlete when I'm 80, not to look like the dad standing there watching my son play hockey. I can still watch him while I'm doing push-ups and squats and lunges. And I was doing some lateral steps and shuffles and marching, breathing, intentional breathing. So like, oh, great. Now I can feel good. And even though it's low intensity, low effort, what it unlocks for me is the ability to feel good the next time in the gym. Have you ever felt when you're in the gym, oh, I'm kind of tight, I'm kind of rigid today, I feel like my body's a little off? Yeah, me too, every fucking day. But if I actually move multiple times throughout the day, that goes away. I can get to the gym and I'm ready to go. I want to be an athlete when I'm 80, not just a dude who looks good when I'm 80. An athlete means like I'm ready to go now at the drop of a hat. I recover now, quick. So I'm measuring all those metrics. The world, ladies and gentlemen, is fucking awesome. And making things so comfortable and so easy and so convenient. And I will never talk bad about the modern day conveniences that we have all been afforded, because we are more wealthy and more abundant than any human in the history of the species. So to complain about that is ridiculous and sad. And I also recognize the opportunity that lives within that to be way stronger every day and to not always choose the comfort, complacency, and simplicity that is afforded me. I can consciously decide, like, no, I'm going to walk today. I'm going to consciously allow myself to sweat my ass off in my jeans as I walk in 100-degree weather. You're like, I'll be all right. I'll have some water. Because guess what? On the other end of that, let's say I walk an hour outside 100-degree weather in my jeans. You're like, yeah, I'm really uncomfortable. I'm really sweaty. And guess what? There's water and electrolytes made by some wonderful company on the other end of that. Whereas historically, even as little as 50 years ago, maybe 80 years ago, there wasn't a beautiful tap with some compounded electrolytes at the other end of that. You're just hauling your ass through the heat. So like, I can still inflict the discomfort and have the comfort on the other end, which is a wonderful gift to all of us in modern day life, right? You have a tap that runs, or you have a water bottle on the other end that's like glass, and you're like, oh my gosh, my life is so difficult. Like, no, man, choose it. Choose hard shit. And here's one thing I want to say that's super important. By not comparing yourself to other people, you unlock the ability to win, right? You unlock the ability to have these built-in dopamine hits throughout the day. So many of us get stuck in social media dopamine, right? Social media dopamine, sugar and fat-laden food dopamine, television dopamine. We get our dopamine, which is our feel-good hormone, our molecule of pursuit. We get that through external means. By not comparing myself to David Goggins every day, to compare to David Goggins, I'm a complete turd. It's important to acknowledge that I'm just comparing myself against myself. So if I today am doing well, then I get dopamine. Like, I did that thing. Like, I feel good. If I compare myself against David, I feel like shit. If I compare myself against myself, I'm doing great. Here's why you shouldn't compare yourself against David, because you're not him. You don't have his brain chemistry. You don't have his physiology. You don't have his genes. So he probably, almost certainly, has some unbelievable genetic advantage. Now, that's not taking anything away from him, but you're different genetically. Here's one example. There's a gene called the COMT gene, COMT, which basically codes for your ability to recycle catecholamines. And so catecholamines are these hormones that exist, the neurotransmitters that exist, that are excitatory in nature. They're adrenaline, norepinephrine, epinephrine. And when those become elevated, you become stimulated, right? So if you and I are in the stressed environment, let's say someone walks in and leaves a rabid dog or a lion in your room, you're like, oh shit. We both respond with the same relative stress amount, hypothetically. Someone who has specific COMT SNPs will experience the stress and then recycle that stress immediately, like, I'm good. 5-10 minutes later, they're good. Those people are said to have a warrior gene, WARRIOR, warrior. And then there's someone else sitting right beside them who experiences that stress and still feels stressed 5 hours later. Same experience, still feels stressed 5 hours later. This person is said to have a warrior gene, WORRIER. Same event, different experience, different result at a physiological level. Does that make you less of a person? No. Does that make you in any way inadequate? No. It just means that relative to your genes, you're going to worry more. And so if you try to live David Goggins' life, you can't. You're going to fail. You're going to always be measuring yourself against something you can't sustain. So one, understanding who you are at a genetic level is important. Two, understanding you're not anybody else. So let it go. The blessing and the curse of social media is so unbelievable for motivation and inspiration. Every day I wake up and I look at people, I'm like, wow, they're crushing it. They're doing unbelievable things. But now I'm starting to compare myself against them if I allow it. I'm like, oh, I'm not them. I'm not them. I'm doing really well for me. And now that is also a slippery slope because some people are completely full of shit. You're not doing really well for you. You're doing terribly for you. You could be doing so much more effectively. So you got to be hard on yourself to a level, but not hard on yourself compared to somebody else, hard on yourself compared to you. And so to be an athlete when you're 80 requires what I call genetic harmony, right? Understanding who I am at a genetic level and then designing a lifestyle, designing an environment, designing a nutrition and supplement plan that fits you and harmonizes with your genes. And this is maybe the most important discovery for me of the last 10 years, right? I did my genetics for the first time in 2016, and I got nothing out of it. I was like, it's useless. Why am I doing this? I get nothing of value. Did it again in 2024, and with 8 years of progress, research, artificial intelligence, it completely blew my mind, what I could understand about myself. For example, in just the last 3 months, my sleep numbers have been unbelievable. Like I've never been like this in my life. I always just thought I was a bad sleeper. Turns out I just have bad stress genes, bad inflammatory genes. Bad isn't a good word, but not well supported. So if I support inflammation and I support my stress genes, my COMT genes, all of a sudden my anxiety, which generally would wake me up before, no longer does. I didn't even know I had anxiety. I just thought I was like agitated. I was a little bit high strung, a little bit agitated. I'm like, nope. I had some low level anxiety, some low level adrenaline floating in my system at 2 a.m. that I couldn't make go away. So if I don't take magnesium and maybe some glutamine and maybe some glycine, maybe some N-acetylcysteine before bed, maybe some turmeric, if I don't take those before bed, my sleep is shot. If I take them, I sleep like a baby. I wake up in the morning feeling like I have an S on my chest, like Superman. So that's one little thing I would have never known unless I look at my genetics. Another thing, riboflavin. My body doesn't recycle methylation very well. So if I put in a little riboflavin, my brain fog goes away, my energy skyrockets. I'm just consistent, and I no longer have that anxious feeling. I'm like, oh, riboflavin? How many people have heard of riboflavin? Very few. You guys may have heard me say this story before. When it comes to my inflammatory genes, like my recovery historically, even as a bodybuilder, was kind of shit. I was sore much longer than everyone else. Now I take fish oils and turmeric every day, as well as magnesium and a bunch of other stuff. But turmeric and magnesium are these two linchpin molecules for me. I'm like, I take these, and all of a sudden my recovery from my training is unbelievably different. I don't feel like I'm constantly walking around like a zombie who's always sore because I just support my inflammatory pathways. Like, wow, this simple stuff. Yeah. And then oxidative stress. I've got some mediocre genes around oxidative stress. So I'm always taking more berries, plant matter, and things high in polyphenols. Like I literally have an olive oil addiction, which drops my oxidative stress. And then my redox, my oxidative stress balanced with my antioxidants is really more balanced. And I feel unbelievably different. I would have never known this. So instead of having a generic protocol based on somebody else's information, now I have a very, very specific protocol based on my information. Oh, interesting. If you haven't run your genes through a really good algorithm, really good AI system, start and realize that every year, every 6 months, there's thousands and thousands and thousands of new research studies coming out. Check back in consistently, because the way that the world is evolving, I think there's 600 research studies on average coming out a day. That's crazy when it comes to just genetics. That's crazy. So the ability to look at that information and find new discoveries, like I'm just so excited for what the world looks like in just a couple of years, what health looks like in just a couple of years. But if you're looking to live to 80, 200 and beyond as an athlete, living out of alignment with your genetics doesn't work. So in summary, coming back to this, I want to be an athlete when I'm 80 objective mission, the first thing that I would suggest we operationalize is like living in alignment with your genetics, genetic harmonization. Do your genes, run it through a system, create an algorithm that works for you. That means training. Well, how am I going to train? Just as an example, if I train now the way I did as a bodybuilder, I would accelerate the aging process. I'm trying to decelerate the aging process. So exercise can be both a stress and a positive and a negative to some people, depending on if you're harmonizing with your genes. So if I overdo it, I'm literally accelerating the oxidative stress, inflammatory burden pathways in my body that I just can't sustain. So I train less intense or less volume and more frequency. And for me, that really works. It doesn't mean I don't train hard. I just will manage my volume a little bit. Nutritionally, I shifted away from, this is maybe the craziest genetic realization of all, is there's so many people talking about carnivore and keto. And I have a genetic predisposition to, if I eat saturated fat, too much saturated fat, anything over 30 grams is what I'm told subjectively, but that's what I've been told. 30 grams a day, my body actually becomes insulin resistant because of saturated fat. I was like, how is that, right? So if I consume a lot of red meat, if I consume a lot of animal products like butter and cream and dairy, I become insulin resistant. And I've seen this happen in reality, whereby I was on a low carb, very low carbohydrate, almost zero carbohydrate diet, consuming a bunch of red meat because I like red meat. I eat a lot of venison, I eat a lot of elk, I eat a lot of like wild animals, a lot of saturated fat. My glucose levels would run between 100 and 110, which for anyone knows, 110 is pre-diabetic. And I was like, how is this possible? I mean, no carbohydrates. So I pulled those out, 3 weeks, pulled them out, and pushed my carbohydrates up. Now I'm eating 250 grams of carbs, depending on training days. And I'm having almost no saturated fat, under 30 grams. My glucose is 79 on average. So it drops 30 points. And I'm eating more carbohydrates and less saturated fats. You're like, oh, well, that's interesting. And even my spikes are basically non-existent. Even though I'm eating 200 grams of carbs, my glucose spikes are almost non-existent. You're like, that's really interesting. That saturated fat would drive insulin resistance and probably drive accelerated aging, because now I've got these glucose levels that are running high. My body's becoming basically caramelized, right? This glycation, that is ultimately accelerating the aging process. I would have never known. I'm like, oh, I'm eating a low carb diet, man. I'm like, I'm not carnivore, but I eat a lot of plants, but really high meats. That doesn't work for me. So now I barely eat any red meat anymore. I opt for fish. I opt for chicken, turkey, eggs, more of a Mediterranean style diet. Works for my genetics. It's been mind-blowing to me. Anyways, so operationalizing this, harmonize your genes, find out what training needs to work for you, find out what nutrition works for you, because I would have never known that. Find out what supplements are required. As I said, there's 5 things that my geneticist said, hey, don't ever stop these. The thing with supplements, as you know, is like, you're like, oh, inositol, that sounds great. Alpha GPC, that sounds awesome too. Alpha lipoic acid, yep, definitely need that. Vitamin C, need that. Vitamin D, need that. My list is 100 vitamins long. So I just take everything. I'm like, I don't know, do I need them all? Let's see. But no human needs 100 vitamins. No one. Which ones are really important? Let's say there's 10, maybe 20 max. There's like 20 that, hey, you need to take these all the time. You don't get these genetically. You need to support these pathways. Great. I'm going to take those for the rest of my life. Then maybe I have 10 to 20 or 30 that I cycle through, because occasionally if I'm training my body in a specific way, maybe I need more oxidative stress support. Maybe I need more inflammatory support. Maybe I need, I don't know, more something. So I'll take those situationally. And then other ones I'll take, maybe never, or maybe other ones I'll take circumstantial. Like I'll try this one for 90 days and see what happens. But it's always going to be like, these are my ones I take all the time. These are my from time to times, and these are my nevers. But at least now I can see that objectively in my genes. And now, don't just trust your genes, measure it. Do it for a few months and see what is your blood telling you. Because look at your blood, urine, and your stool, and it'll tell you what your body is missing. Because your genetics are the blueprint, but your testing is your measure of now, right? Your blood is a snapshot of this moment. Your urine is a snapshot of what's sort of happening at a metabolic level over the last few days or weeks. And ultimately, your stool is looking at your microbiome and what's happening in there as well. So operationalizing, test your stuff, set your objective metrics, know what your standards are from a strength perspective, from a physical body perspective, from a mobility perspective, from a VO2 max perspective, from a blood measure perspective. Objectify those. When you got those nailed, you can objectify, am I doing well or not? Don't measure yourself against anybody else. It's great to use them as a measure of, or a means of motivation, but it shouldn't be your primary measure of success. Ladies and gentlemen, this podcast is brought to you by us here at Muscle Intelligence. The coaching is evolving so much just in the last 12 and 18 months to incorporate this genetic harmonization process. We're looking at everyone's genetics now in a process we call genetic harmonization. If you're interested in working with us and our genetic team, you can go to dnaperform.com. If you want to work with us as a coaching client as well, or if you want to just do your genetics, go to dnaperform.com. If you want to have us integrate it with you as well, you can just go to muscleintelligence.com/apply. We don't take on everyone as a coaching client because obviously we don't have a huge amount of time. And this is a pretty intensive process. So if you're someone who's committed to being the best version of yourself now and when you're 80, let us work with you to become an athlete when you're 80. This is not just a body transformation contest. Of course, if body fat is a measure of success for you, like we want to get that down, we will. But for the first thing is always creating a harmony with your genetics, which can take up to 90 days on its own, because we have to find what the plan that works for you. And then what you'll find is, gosh, the reason I overeat is no longer there. The reason I drink alcohol is no longer there. I'm not constantly in a state of anxiety or stress or overwhelm, because my body has what it needs at a base level. Now, it's not a promise, because sometimes people do still have anxiety or panic or overwhelm, because depending how long you've had that can go from what's a state to now being a trait. But we'll work together with you and our team to get through every challenge you have, so that you can show up at your highest and best for what's most important to you today and until you are 100 plus years old. Ladies and gents, thanks for being here. DNAperform.com, muscleintelligence.com/apply if you want to work with us. I'll see you on the next podcast.